Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Christian Publishing Online Summit. This webinar series features 12 acquisition editors and publishing executives from various Christian publishing houses, all discussing various aspects of writing and getting published. The live webinars will take place through the end of this month, but recordings will be available on the Writing for Your Life website. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I'd like to let you know that you can ask questions through the chat feature of the Zoom webinar. Just type in your questions and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So today our guest is Amy Simpson. Amy is an acquisitions editor for Moody Publishing. She's also a former publishing executive, an award-winning author, a speaker, and a leadership coach. She has more than 20 years of experience in Christian publishing. She holds an English degree from Trinity International University, an MBA from the University of Colorado, and a CPCC certification from Coaches Training Institute. She loves to travel with her husband, Trevor, their two teenage girls, and their lovable dogs, Rosie and Sam. She lives with these wonderful folks in the suburbs of Chicago. Amy is interested in considering nonfiction books aimed at evangelical readers, particularly those aimed at producing spiritual growth. No fiction, poetry, anthology, scripts, or children's books. So that gives you a good idea of what Amy works on and what she's interested in. She's been a featured speaker at our conferences, and I'm very glad to have her here with us today. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Very glad to be here and looking forward to sharing with your audience and all those who will tune in later, watch the recording. So thanks for having me, Brian.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So what I want to talk about today is 4 dimensions of a great nonfiction idea. As Brian mentioned, I'm an acquisitions editor for Moody Publishing in Chicago. And actually, by this point, I've been around Christian publishing and in or around Christian publishing for 25 years. So it's been a while, and I'm also an author myself. So I can understand how hard it can be on that side of the publishing equation also. Developing proposals, trying to get your work published. I know it's not easy, but I have experience on both sides. So hopefully I'll have some wisdom for you to share today, or to share with you today. In my time in publishing, I've seen some interesting methods that authors have used to try to make their proposals stand out. A few of those examples: brightly colored envelopes, which they think will stand out from the stack when they send in something by paper, which I don't recommend, but still does happen. I've seen people who send daily emails, who make frequent phone calls, trying to follow up with the editor, trying to get their proposal noticed. I've seen people use really clever subject lines that they think will get their attention in their emails. I've seen people getting others to contact the editor on their behalf. So maybe if somebody else puts in a good word for me, or bugs this person on my behalf, maybe I'll get a response. And probably the most odd thing I've seen is this, and this is why I have a picture of the whale on the screen right now, is a time when someone actually sent me a book proposal through the mail inside a paper mache whale. So there's this whale made of paper mache, and somebody sent it in the mail, and I had to break open the paper mache whale in order to pull out the proposal they had put inside. Now, I will acknowledge, I do remember the paper mache whale. It stuck with me, it made an impression. However, I don't remember the proposal at all, or the person who sent it to me. So in case you're thinking, oh, I should try that because obviously it was really memorable, I'll just add that as a caveat, that it did not actually make the proposal itself more interesting or more memorable. So I just want to tell you, these things don't help. Like everyone else, editors are busy and want to be respected as adults and as professionals. And we always have, you hear about the stack, an acquisitions editor's stack of proposals they need to get through. And it's true, we all have a stack that we're working our way through. And so it takes time to get through that. So when you send a proposal, chances are there are many proposals ahead of it in that stack, and they'll get to it and they'll get back with you. But there are better ways to get an editor's attention, and it really starts with having a strong idea. And while all publishers receive way more proposals than they could possibly ever publish, that they are always looking for new projects. So, if you're tempted to believe that no one would ever be interested in your idea simply because there are so many other ideas out there coming to editors, it's not true that means they wouldn't be interested in yours, because while we are always receiving lots of proposals, we aren't always receiving great proposals. So if you can put together a great proposal based on a great idea, that will really help you stand out from the pack. That's why they hire me, or people like me. That's why publishers hire people like me to find new books and new authors. It's because we are looking for great ones, and we are always looking for new projects. So keep that in mind. That process is always underway, even if it does take time. So what makes a great nonfiction book idea? That's a good question, and that's what I want to talk about today. And there are many ways this question could be answered. So it's not that I believe I have the complete, answer to that question, or the answer that every editor would give. And keep in mind, there is a strong subjective component to this business. So while I may not agree with another editor's opinion, that person may not agree with my opinion. That is an element as well. There is a matter of preference. There's a matter of the fit with that particular publisher. There's a matter of, they may have recently published something on the same topic, and no matter how great your idea is, they're just not going to do something else on that topic right away. So those things all come into play as well. And I'm not going to talk about all of that today. What I want to talk about is just some 4 basic categories that make a great nonfiction book idea. And I think most editors would agree with me that these 4 dimensions I'm going to share with you today are important, and that they do help contribute to a great book idea that gets our attention. So the first dimension is an interesting idea. And this might sound obvious, and in a way it is, but you might be surprised at how many book ideas I come across that lack this element of interest. Now, it might be interesting to the author, it probably is, but is it going to be interesting to anyone else? Is it going to be interesting to a wide audience of people? So what makes an idea interesting in this space? Well, one aspect is that it has an element of uniqueness. So there is something that's different about it, something that causes it to stand out from everything else. So for example, are you saying something new that hasn't really been said before, or hasn't been said recently by someone else? Are you saying something old but in a new way? Do you have a new way of approaching the topic or the message, or do you have a new way of putting the book together? That can make it interesting. Are you saying it to a new audience? That's another element of uniqueness as well. So even though you may be saying something that you feel other people have said before, if you're saying it to a new audience, it'll be new and interesting and unique to that audience. So that can be a good element of uniqueness. And is there something unexpected about it? So, for example, I wouldn't expect this question to be answered in that way. Or I wouldn't expect, someone with this background to have this take on the topic, or whatever. There's something that is unexpected or sort of surprising about the idea that can help contribute to its uniqueness as well. So think about that. How unique is your idea, and what is it that makes it unique? That's part of what makes it interesting. Another piece of what makes it interesting is it compelling? And there are a few things I think are important to make an idea compelling. One is that it is specific. And this is a very important one that a lot of people don't understand or struggle with when they're first starting out, because it can feel very risky to get really specific with your idea. It can feel like, it's safer to keep it really broad, either because you think that will make more people interested in it, broaden the audience, or because you're afraid you can't write an entire book on a narrow or specific topic. And I'm here to tell you, you can and you should. That having a very specific topic actually tends to make your audience bigger and broader. It's sort of counterintuitive, but that's an important piece. And then having a specific topic also tends to make it stand out from the crowd. So if you have a really broad topic or a very general topic, you're going to be out there with your book trying to compete with all the other books that have been written related to that general topic. Where if you are specific and you take a slice of that broad topic, there are fewer books out there that you need to directly compete with when your book actually gets out there. So choose a specific topic that helps to make it compelling and to make sure you have a really strong, clear message. Another element of compelling is that it appeals to an existing curiosity, a question people are asking already, even if they don't realize it. So while people may be asking a question, really they are aware of it, they're asking it explicitly, maybe they're even having conversations with other people about it. For example, a parent who wonders, how do I keep my children going to church when they don't want to go to church? That's a very specific question that a lot of people are probably asking at any one moment. They might be asking the people around them that question, and maybe there's a book in that answers that question. But sometimes, again, they may not even realize they have that question. That's also possible, where people kind of can walk around with a vague sense of discomfort in an area of life and feel that something is not settled for them, but maybe not realize exactly what it is, or they haven't actually formulated the question yet. And you can come along and help formulate that question for them and then answer it. So for example, I've written a lot about in the arena of mental health and mental illness and churches, how the church can minister to people with mental illness. Often the questions related to that are questions people are asking already, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're questions where they just, people feel there's this vague sense of, I'm not quite sure what to do when I'm around someone who has a mental illness. I'm not quite sure how to respond. They might not be asking questions about it yet, but when they see a book that's aimed at a question like, how can I do meaningful ministry to people who are living with mental health problems? They may resonate with that question and realize, you know what, that is something I'm wondering about. I'd like to pick up that book. So that idea of appealing to an existing curiosity is important. Even if it's a question people are not already asking themselves, it needs to be something that they are curious about and they are likely to feel that that question resonates with them, that is something they wonder as well. Another thing that makes an idea compelling in a book is that it promises benefits to the reader. So not only is this something the author wants to write, but there's a benefit for the reader. There's something in it for them. For example, how will the reader be changed through reading the book? What will they learn? Around here at Moody, we like to say that a book, when people pick up a book, and I think it's my boss, actually, Randall Payleitner, who says this most often, when people pick up a book or when they buy a book, they're hiring the book to do a job for them. So if they're hiring this book to do a job for them, and this is particularly true with nonfiction, what job is it that this book will do? Will it help them answer that question of how to keep their kids going to church when they don't want to, or how to minister to someone who has a particular kind of health problem or a life challenge? So think about that. Sometimes people start out with following the advice to write about what they know, or to share about what they're passionate about. And I'm not discounting that advice. Those are important pieces of advice. But it is also important, if you want to get a book published, to think about what your reader is going to get out of this and what job they are going to come at this and get done by reading the book. And if you can't explain that easily, like in one sentence, then you probably need to do additional work to make your idea compelling to other people. And another element of being compelling is that the book comes alongside the reader. This is not always true, but this is almost always true. And the exception to this is if you are very famous, or you have an incredibly unique story, that means people will be interested just in your story for its own sake. But if you're not truly famous, there probably aren't going to be a lot of people who are interested in just picking up your story, or who are going to go out looking for your story. So if you're not incredibly famous, or you don't have, a background as a circus performer, or, something like that, then you need to come up with an idea that, again, will come alongside the reader and make the reader the hero of the story, rather than you being the hero of the story. And it goes back to this idea that people are hiring a book to do a job for them, that people need to know there's something in it for them. If they're gonna put in the time it takes to read through a whole book, they want to know that they're going to come out different after they read it. So it's important in almost every case that you structure the book so that you are coming alongside the reader, allowing the reader to be the hero of that book, and asking the reader, or instead of asking the reader to walk alongside you, where you are the hero of the book. And I hope that distinction makes sense. But often memoirs, for example, are usually books where the writer is the hero of the book. And again, if you're super famous, you can write a memoir and get it published, and a lot of people will read it. But for most of us, that's just not the case. So it's going to be far more effective if you come alongside the reader in their journey where they are and make them the hero of the story. And then the third element to interesting is intriguing. And by intriguing, I mean it's something that gets people initially interested and gives them the thought that, I want to know more. I really want to know more or understand more about this. So can you, as you're thinking about your idea, can you picture someone seeing it on a bookshelf, or seeing it on Amazon or somewhere else online and thinking, I want to know more. I really want to pick up that book. I really need to read that. So it should have that intrigue factor. Another question, is this something people would go looking for? Because this is how most people find books these days. For the most part, people are not finding their books by browsing through the shelves of bookstores at their leisure, kind of looking to see what's out, what's new. It's really that people are going to find a specific type of book on a specific topic to do a specific job for them. And most of the time they're going online to do that. So if it's going to be intriguing, it's going to be an idea that people would go looking for because they need it, and then they would find it and buy it and read it and have their lives changed. Another element of intriguing is the question of whether there's enough substance that it makes sense as a book. And I mean as a book, as opposed to, say, an article, a blog post, a tweet. Sometimes people put together a book idea that is, and again, I'm telling you to be really specific, right? But if you're so specific that really the entire book could be encapsulated in a one Twitter post, then keep it to Twitter, because you're not going to write a substantive book out of an idea that is that small. Or sometimes, is it something that could just be excuse me, written out in a blog post on your blog? And if so, I'd say write a blog post about it. But if it's something that can be written about, maybe summarized in a blog post, but written about more fully in a book length work, then it may make sense to pursue it as a book. So just think about, is there enough substance here? That's one of the things that makes a book intriguing, is the idea that there's going to be some significant substance, and it's worth reading through the whole book rather than, say, reading an article or a blog post. And then, the last thing I want to say about intriguing is, are you adding to an existing conversation versus simply repeating what's already been written? or trying to write everything there is to know about a topic. This is an error that a lot of writers make, particularly people who are first-time authors or who are trying to get published for the first time. Putting together a book proposal that's basically everything I can think of that there is to say on this one topic, and maybe ignoring everything else that's already out there that's been written on or related to that topic. And you know, we really, if people are already having a conversation about this topic, if there are a lot of books out there, we don't really need anybody to come along and write the definitive large volume that tries to cover the entire topic. It's really, you know, what slice of that are you going to add to the conversation? So think of it as, you know, a room full of people who are sitting around a table, and they're talking about a specific topic, and they're having an interesting conversation, and then someone else comes in to join the conversation and simply, you know, starts from scratch and makes a speech about everything they think everybody ought to know about that topic. Well, that wouldn't be very well received in that room by the people who are around that table, because they've already been having a conversation on that. We've already covered those points. You know, they're kind of trying to get in deeper and get more specific with it. So if you come in and you listen for a while, you listen to the existing conversation, you become familiar with what people are already saying, then you can become aware of the gaps in the conversation, the things you can add to it. And then as you do that, then that's always, you know, appreciated, because you're adding something to the conversation and you're respecting what others have already said. So I like to use that metaphor for people who are approaching a book idea, to be sure that you are listening to the existing conversation out there already in books and in articles on your topic, and you're finding the gap in that conversation, or you're finding the unique contribution you can make to the conversation without trying to kind of cover all the ground that everyone else has already covered. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so dimension 2 is a ready audience. And what I mean by that, of course, is that you want to have lots of these little bears in chairs waiting for you to give your wisdom and your advice to them. So the first element of a ready audience is, again, that it's specific. So of course I'm coming back to this specific idea again, but what I said about a specific topic also applies to your audience. You need to know exactly who you're writing to, and to know that in general, a more specific audience will reach more people. And again, this is counterintuitive. It can be very tempting to try to write very broadly. Just, you know, when someone asks you, who is this book for? You might want to say it's for everyone, because you think everyone ought to read it and everyone could benefit from it. No book is for everyone. People are different. People have their own questions, their own life needs. People are in different life stages. You know, if you write a book that's aimed at everyone, it's likely there's no one who will feel the book is really truly written for them. So you want to find an audience that you can write to authentically, who will really believe this book is written for them. And the way to do that is to discipline yourself, to narrow your focus and choose that specific group and stick to them. So be specific with your audience. That will help you find a ready audience who wants to hear from you. Also, recognize that just as with the topics, when I was talking about being more specific with your topic, you know, and if you're too broad, you're out there trying to compete with too many other books. Same thing is true with the audience. The more types of people you try to write to, the more you are competing for their time with other books and other things they could be doing with their time. So you really want to be, again, specific and recognize that your book will not reach everyone. But as you really take hold of an audience for that book and you write specifically to them, you will be able to write in a way that will cause them to feel, yeah, this is worth paying attention to because it's written for me, and this author gets me and has something to say to me. So you're not having to compete with everything else that all these people could be doing. You just have to compete with what might interest that specific group on that specific topic. Also, it's just important to realize that in this age of customization, people really want to know that it's truly written to them. So we've gotten very used to being able to have things, all kinds of things that are designed just for us, right? And we can customize them ourselves, and we can find groups of like-minded people and talk with them and listen to them, and even if they might be strangers on social media or whatever, it's easy to do that now. So people have come to expect a high level of customization and really want to know that as they're reading a book, it's written to them, it applies to them, it's for them. And all of this will, by the way, make your writing far more crisp and compelling. When you're not trying to write to everybody and, oh, I need to acknowledge this person over here and this person over here, but you can stay kind of laser focused on that specific audience. You'll be more confident in your writing, you'll be crisper in your writing, you'll just make your message far more compelling when it is, who you're aiming at, and you truly write to them. So make sure that you zero in on that specific audience. The next point is sizable, and I would say not only sizable, but an audience that is sizable that you are capable of reaching. So it's not enough just to say, there are a lot of people out there who, are moms of preschoolers. That's true. Are you capable of reaching a large number of moms of preschoolers because of who you are, because of your experiences, because of your connections, whatever. So make sure that you consider both of those ideas. You need an audience that is sizable and that you are capable of reaching. And this is really speaking to the dreaded platform, the dreaded P word in publishing, and that is platform. I know it can be discouraging to authors to hear publishers talk about the importance of platform. And I'm not going to camp out here, but just to say, first of all, there are no hard and fast rules about platform, the size of platform you need, and it's different for different publishers. And it's more of a, it when you see it kind of thing, rather than, there aren't any publishers who are like, we need to have at least these numbers and this many followers and all that. It's really the whole package of what this person has to offer in terms of platform. Let's look at that as a package and see, does it seem like it's truly viable? But I will say, generally speaking, you should have at least 4 digits worth of people already listening to you in some way. So whether that means you have a couple thousand followers on Facebook, or it means you are a pastor of a church that's, a mega church that's got a couple of thousand people in it, or you have some kind of speaking ministry or online ministry, or you're part of an organization, it has a big audience, all of those things are part of platform. It's not just social media, it's not just online, it's not just blogging or your website, it's really the whole package. So think in terms of what audience you already have access to and are capable of reaching. And another important piece of that is that you need to show audience engagement. So it's not just members, it's not just numbers of how many people are, you're connected with, but how engaged are they? Are they actually paying attention to and interested in what you're saying? So if you put up blog post after blog post and nobody ever comments on them, that can make your audience look like your audience is not so engaged. Or if you have a lot of followers on Facebook, but nobody ever shares your posts, so you want to look at, do I have people who are engaged with me also? Think about, when you're thinking about audience, think about who is your current audience? Not just who do I want to reach, but who am I currently reaching? And write to them. I always encourage people to start there. Start with who you have. And you don't have those people in your audience by accident. You have them because they've been attracted to you because of who you are, or what you're already saying, what you're already doing, where God has placed you. All of those things are important. So consider who you are speaking to now and write to them. Or if you want to write to a different audience, it's important that you show first that you have reached them and that they'll be eager to buy and read a book just because you wrote it. So if you want to make a switch from where you are in terms of audience to a new audience, you got to put in that work first before you send off a book proposal, because the publisher is going to want to see that you have access to that audience now. And then the third point here is that a ready audience needs you. You want to make sure you can demonstrate that your book meets felt needs that your audience is already in touch with and already going to be motivated to look for a solution to. So what does your audience need? What are they already looking for? Think about those questions. A felt need, again, is a need that they are aware of in themselves or in their lives. And it might be somebody else in their life who they feel needs this, but it's a need that's compelling enough to them that they want to buy a book to give that person. So think in terms of felt needs. And remember, the buyer of a book isn't always the reader. So for example, with parents and children, books that are aimed at children are typically purchased by parents, or teachers, or librarians, or others who are making the books available to the children. So you have to not only think about the audience who's going to read it, but also the audience who's going to buy it. What do they need, and how can you create something that meets that need? And then make sure that you're presenting a clear solution. And this solution, I would encourage you not to think in terms of this. And this is something I've heard a lot. People will read my story and they'll be encouraged to see that things can work out for them too. Or they'll read my story and they'll see that they'll be encouraged by what God did in my life. Or they'll read my story and then they'll see how it worked in my life, and then they'll learn some things, some principles about how it could work in this situation too. This is just, it's not a clear solution. It's not something that you're really presenting to people. It's really, you're expecting the reader to do all the work there in terms of really learning what it is you have to offer in terms of a solution for them. And again, if people are hiring a book to do a job for them, they want the book to do the job. They don't want to have to do the job. If they feel that they have to do the job, they'll go find another book that will do the job for them. So make sure that you are presenting a clear solution in your book to that felt need, that you make it explicit and easy for them to find. Nobody wants to have to work too hard. We all have too many things going on in our lives to have to work that hard when we're reading a book. Okay, my third dimension is a natural fit. And the first thing I want to say about that is that a natural fit means that the book idea should be faithful to your brand. So for example, if you have a ministry right now as a blogger for parents of teenagers, you're probably going to want to create a book idea that is aimed at parents of teenagers and that says the kinds of things that you say on your blog so that it will fit with the existing brand you have. If you are, the pastor of a church, and that's the kind of how people know you, and you're doing ministry in a church setting, and then you decide you want to write a book on home organizing, you're going to have a hard time getting people to buy into that, because that's not what you're known for. Even if you might be really good at organizing people's homes, that's not really your brand at this point. So consider, is this the kind of thing people would expect from you? Is this the kind of thing you already write or talk about? And is this the audience you already reach? Are they going to be interested in that? Another important question I encourage people to consider is, will you be able to and want to talk about this topic for potentially the next few years of your life? Because if you write a book, first of all, if you get a book published, the publishing process itself takes a while. So you may be writing that book for months, and then you send it off to the publisher, and the publisher is, taking it through the publishing process for a year or so, and they're working with you on the book during that time as well. And then the book comes out and it's actually successful, and you get some interviews and some people who are interested in having you write articles or write guest posts for their blogs. Maybe you get some speaking engagements. You might be talking and writing on that topic for a few years of your life after the book comes out. So is this something that you are going to be passionate and motivated to do, to continue talking about? And do you have enough to say on the topic that you really feel you'll be able to do that? So that's an important question also related to that, the fit with your style and your brand. Another element of natural fit is credibility. Does this fit with you? Are you a credible author for this book on this topic? Does this fit with your area of expertise? Is it relevant to your life experience, to your education, to your professional training? Will you be able to understand what your readers are going through and empathize with them? That's an important part of credibility also. So that empathy, where people are coming from, you've been there, those pieces are important. And then just, do you have the qualifications to write on this topic? And sometimes that's just about your life experience, that it fits with something you've been through. Sometimes it's about, having the right degree or the right professional experience that just gives you credibility on that topic. So think about that credibility and make sure, again, that it will be a good fit with any other writing or speaking you do. So you don't have to try to be two different people speaking to two different audiences. For going back to the example of the pastor who's wanting to write about home decorating, where, or maybe a better example would be an author who's published a book and then they want to publish another book that's on a completely different topic that might appeal to two different audiences. That's tough to do, and it means you're going to be kind of mostly starting from scratch with that second book. So think about that credibility in terms of your the consistency with the other work you've done and you're doing. And then the third point there regarding natural fit is that you are at least one step ahead on the journey you want to take your readers on. And this is important. Sometimes people want to write a book that kind of chronicles the journey they're on, and that can be okay, but in some cases, but for the most part, it works far better if you can talk about a journey you've been on or the place you've been in your journey, and you've now moved on to the next place. Partly because people usually can write more coherently about experiences they've had than about experiences they're in the middle of. And we tend to be able to better come alongside other people and let them be the heroes of the story when we're at least one step ahead, versus when we're in the middle of it, we tend to be more tempted to kind of ask people to walk alongside us. But another reason is that people will, if readers don't believe that you are at least one step ahead of them, they'll have no reason to read what you have to say. They want to learn from you. So while it might feel arrogant, or it might take a lot of confidence to put yourself in that position to say, you know what, I really do have something to teach other people on this topic. It is what people need. We all need other people who have gone ahead of us, who are at least one step ahead of us, to light the way for us, to show us where to put our feet, to warn us of the places where the pathway is slippery, where we might stumble over a stone or a log in the middle of the path. So if you're going to write a book, readers are going to want to know that you have something to offer in terms of being a little bit ahead of them, or maybe a lot ahead of, but it needs to be at least one step ahead of you. So have you learned something that your readers have not yet learned? That's worth sharing. Are you ready to speak with authority on this topic? And I mean ready in terms of practically speaking and emotionally speaking. It's important that you can really love your readers and be ready to minister to them. Can you love your readers? Can you love others around this topic? And do you have something to say that will guide them and minister to them, even while it offers them the hope of knowing that you've made it onto the next step? And I also encourage you to consider that you need to say something worth disagreeing with. If you're going to write a book, say something that others can disagree with, that's worth enough that other people can see it differently. And I say this because a lot of times people are tempted to minimize themselves in an effort to display humility, or to keep from taking the risk that they might create conflict or other people might disagree with them. Writing is risky work, and anything worth writing and reading is potentially controversial. If there's no possibility that somebody might disagree with what you write, your book will not be challenging to anyone. It won't ask anybody to grow or to change, and it will be lost in the wind. So make sure that as you consider, being one step ahead of your readers, that you write something that is worth saying enough that other people may see it differently. They may disagree. And that's all part of adding to the conversation as well. Finally, dimension 4 is clarity. And one element of clarity is simplicity. It's important that you can easily describe the other 3 dimensions very specifically. And by the other 3 dimensions, I mean that you can describe the idea, you can describe the audience, and you can describe why it's a natural fit for you. So I encourage you to think through the answers, or think through how you could describe your idea in 3 sentences. First sentence, this book says blank to this audience. Second sentence, it will help the audience blank. Fill in the blank. How will this help your audience? And the third sentence, I'm the right person to write it because blank. So this book says blank to blank audience. It will help the audience, fill in the blank, and I'm the right person to write it because, fill in the blank. All right, so if you can't describe your book simply in those 3 sentences, I think you have more work to do to refine your idea to the point where it will be simple and clear. The second point under clarity is that it stands on its own. In your book, any book idea needs to be easy to understand without a lot of explanation. And the reason for this is that a book has to sell itself. If somebody's going to look for a book online or in a bookstore, there's not going to, the author's not going to be there saying, here, buy my book and let me explain to you what it's all about and why you should read it. And I know it's not quite clear when you look at it, so I want to make sure I explain to you what this book is about and why, what's important about it. No, you're not going to have that opportunity. No one will be there to explain all that. Now, there will be some copy, that describes the book and gives people a sense of what it's about, but it has to sell itself. So if it's easy to understand without a lot of explanation, you have a much better chance that it can sell itself. Another idea it needs to stand on its own is because if you're shopping the book around and you're trying to get it published with a publisher, most editors can tell you, based on those 3 sentences, whether they're interested in your idea, whether they're interested in seeing more. So if those 3 sentences, if you have those 3 sentences down and they're very clear, you're going to have a much better idea or a much better opportunity of getting an editor interested in your idea, because they can tell at just in those 3 sentences whether it seems like it might be a good fit for them and whether it captures interest. So do those 3 sentences encapsulate your idea in a way that stands on its own and is intriguing enough without more information? That's an important question. Also make sure that the benefit is really clear, so that you're not just describing this is what the book has in it, but this is what the book does. That job that you're hiring the book to do, what will it do? So that it will be easy for someone else to promote the book to potential buyers. Or for you, on when you send out a tweet or on your Facebook page, or a publisher, getting interviews for you and that kind of thing. So make sure that benefit is part of the clarity here. And then finally, make sure you can describe your book in an elevator pitch. In a short speech that would spans the amount of time it takes for an average elevator ride. So that when people ask you, what is your book about? Or tell me about what you're writing, you can give them a quick summary, which is probably all they'll have time for. So make sure you have that elevator pitch down and you can give a very brief summary of the book that's really clear. Many customers will buy a book based on that short online description, just maybe a paragraph that describes the book. So your book needs to be encapsulated in that much copy. And the more you can do that from the very beginning, the better position you'll be in to not only get your book published, but sell it later on. Remember, most people have short attention spans. There is a lot competing for our attention these days. So none of us have like a deficit in our lives of things to pay attention to, right? We all have plenty of things to pay attention to. It's just a matter of choosing what is most important to us in a moment. So you're going to have to compete with those other things that are attracting people's attention, and make it short enough that a person can really understand it quickly. And again, be clear about what's in it for the reader so that they feel compelled to pick it up because it's going to do that job for them. Just this week, I presented to my team a proposal that I'm really excited about. It's interesting. It addresses a specific problem for a specific audience. It's a perfect fit with the author's established audience and previous writings, and the idea is clear. I got excited as soon as I started reading the proposal for the first time. I actually got chills. My heart beat a little faster, and I couldn't wait to present it to my team. And as I read through it, my primary thought became, I hope we get to publish this. And when my thoughts, when I'm reading a proposal and my thoughts move from, oh, I wonder what this is, to, I'm interested, to, oh, I hope we get to publish this, I just see that as serendipitous. Things are coming together for that proposal. This is something I really want to champion. I hope that book I presented this week gets approved. I hope we do get to publish it. And I tell you this, just to give you a glimpse into an editor's reaction when something great comes across my desk. It might be tempting to imagine an acquisitions editor as some kind of sadist who delights in saying no to people, who likes to reject book ideas, and it's just not true. And I'm sure if you're tuning into all these webinars, you're going to see all these different editors and executives and see we're very human and see our love for great books and for authors. So contrary to that, picture of a sadist, we don't enjoy saying no. None of us do. We love to say yes. And when we get the opportunity to say yes to a proposal, it makes my day. It's a very joyful experience. And when I can share that with the author, when I can say, I'm going to be presenting this, and I know the author's excited about it, and I'm excited about it, we're working together. When I get to share the news with the author that their book proposal has been approved for publication, you know, that's a very exciting moment, not only for the author, but for me as well. So I want you to know that we want to say yes. We love to say yes. And I think I can speak for a lot of other editors when I say this too. Part of the reason I'm in this job is because I love books. I really love books. I also love ideas and learning and ministry and being part of a process that has the potential to change lives through the experience of reading. So I love to be a champion for great projects. And please know that the editors want to say yes to you. We're looking for great ideas, and if you have one that meets these criteria, you probably can find an editor who will advocate for you and for your book. So take these 4 dimensions to heart, and the advice I've given for really making sure you have these things in place, and it will help you get the attention of an editor who wants to say yes to you. I hope that's helpful, and I will be happy to address any questions. My contact information is up here in case that's helpful to someone, but otherwise we can do Q&A for a few minutes if there are questions for me.
Amy, thank you so much. That was really insightful and helpful. You really dug into the guts of these issues, I think, and presented in a very clear manner. So I hope that it was helpful to all of the audience. I'm sure it will be. Amy has a hard stop, so we only have a couple minutes for questions, but you can go ahead and type those into the chat box, and Amy's been gracious enough here to share her email address with you too. So I'm sure, you know, she'd be glad to field questions directly when she has time. She's obviously a busy person. So I think, Amy, probably just to let you be able to get to your next engagement quickly, maybe we should just go ahead and end it here. I just want to again say thank you so much for joining us. It was really a valuable experience. So thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope it will be helpful.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.